The muddy waters of the Mara River rushed around Officer Marcus Rodriguez's chest as he fought against the current, the drowning lion cub clinging desperately to his shoulders. Just minutes earlier, the 34-year-old police sergeant had been conducting routine wildlife patrol checks on the riverbank when he witnessed something that would change his life forever. A tiny cub tumbling into the swollen river, swept away by floodwaters that had risen overnight from heavy rains upstream. Marcus had been working with Kenya Wildlife Service as part of an international police exchange program for 8 months, helping combat poaching in Kenya's Masai Mara. His law enforcement training had taught him to assess situations carefully and follow protocol, but he had never faced a situation quite like this. The cub, no more than 4 months old, had been playing too close to the water's edge when the soft earth crumbled beneath his paws. His terrified squeals as he was dragged downstream by the powerful current pierced through Marcus's professional composure. Without hesitation, the officer dropped his radio and patrol equipment and plunged into the dangerous river. "I couldn't just watch him drown," Marcus later told investigators. "Every instinct I had as a protector overrode my training as a law enforcement officer. Whether it's a person or an animal in distress, my job is to serve and protect." The rescue nearly cost Marcus his life. The Mara River during flood season is treacherous, filled with hidden debris and unpredictable currents that have claimed the lives of countless animals and several humans over the years. As Marcus fought to reach the struggling cub, a submerged log struck his left shoulder, nearly knocking him unconscious. Only his determination to save the young lion, the same drive that made him become a police officer, kept him focused as he finally managed to grab the exhausted animal. The cub, weak from swallowing river water and panicked from the trauma, immediately wrapped his small paws around Marcus's neck and held on with surprising strength. Marcus could feel the animal's tiny heart beating rapidly against his chest as he began the dangerous journey back to shore, fighting against a current that seemed determined to drag them both downstream toward the crocodile-infested pools below. What Marcus didn't realize as he struggled through the muddy water was that he was being watched. On the riverbank, hidden among the acacia trees, 5 adult lionesses had been tracking the sound of their missing cub's distress calls. The pride had been searching frantically for the youngster, following his scent trail to the river's edge, just in time to witness Marcus's rescue attempt. As Marcus finally reached the shallower water near the bank, exhausted and gasping for breath, he looked up to see a sight that made his blood freeze. The entire pride was there, not just the 5 lionesses, but also a massive male lion with a dark mane, all standing motionless in a semicircle around the water's edge. Their amber eyes were fixed on him and the cub he carried. Marcus's mind raced through his options, drawing on his police training for high-stress situations, but he quickly realized he had none. He was trapped in chest-deep water, holding a lion cub, with 6 full-grown lions blocking his path to safety. Any sudden movement could trigger an attack that would end his life in seconds. The largest lioness, clearly the pride's matriarch, took a step closer to the water. Marcus held his breath, expecting the worst. Lions are fiercely protective of their young, and here he was, a human stranger holding one of their cubs. Everything he knew about dangerous situations told him this would end badly. But something extraordinary was about to happen, something that would challenge everything scientists understood about lion cognition and social behavior. The matriarch's eyes weren't filled with aggression or threat. Instead, Marcus detected something he had never seen in a wild predator's gaze during his months in Kenya: recognition and what appeared to be gratitude. The cub in Marcus's arms began mewing softly, calling to his pride. The sound seemed to break. The tense standoff and what followed would be captured on Marcus's body camera, which had been recording automatically throughout the entire incident. The matriarch stepped into the shallow water, her massive paws creating ripples as she moved, closer to Marcus. Every muscle in his body tensed, his police training preparing him for a threat that never came. Instead, the lioness stopped just 3 feet away and did something that defied every law of predator behavior Marcus had studied during his wildlife service training. She lowered her head in what could only be described as a bow. The gesture lasted several seconds, during which the other Pride members remained completely still, as if witnessing a ceremony of profound significance. When the matriarch raised her head, she made direct eye contact with Marcus. Not the threatening stare of a predator assessing prey, but the steady gaze of acknowledgement between equals. The cub in Marcus's arms grew more active, reaching toward his mother with tiny paws while making soft chirping sounds. The matriarch responded with gentle chuffing vocalizations, the same sounds lionesses use to communicate with their cubs during nursing and grooming. "It's okay, little one," Marcus whispered to the cub, his voice barely audible above the sound of the rushing water. "Your family is here." As if responding to his words, the matriarch took another step closer. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs, but something in the lioness's demeanor told him he wasn't in danger. Her approach was careful, deliberate, and completely non-threatening. What happened next would be analyzed by animal behaviorists around the world for years to come. The matriarch gently extended her massive head toward Marcus, close enough that he could feel her warm breath on his face. For several moments she simply studied him, her intelligent amber eyes seeming to assess not just his physical presence but something deeper, his intentions, his character, his role in saving her cub. Then, she did something unprecedented in recorded lion behavior. The matriarch began to groom Marcus, her rough tongue making contact with his forehead. The same nurturing behavior she would show to members of her own pride. The gesture was unmistakable. She was accepting him, temporarily, as part of her family unit. Marcus remained perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe as this apex predator showed him a level of trust that contradicted everything he thought he knew about wild animals. The grooming lasted only 30 seconds, but the message was clear to every member of the pride. Marcus was not a threat. He was not prey. He was the human who had risked his life to save one of their own. The other lionesses began to move closer, their body language relaxed rather than aggressive. The massive male lion, who had been maintaining a watchful distance, padded to the water's edge and lowered himself into a resting position, a clear signal that he considered the situation peaceful. Marcus carefully began moving toward the shore, still carrying the cub. The pride parted to create a clear path for him, their behavior more reminiscent of an honor guard than predators surrounding prey. As he reached the muddy bank, Marcus slowly knelt and placed the cub on solid ground. The reunion was immediate and emotional. The matriarch rushed to her offspring, nuzzling him thoroughly, checking for injuries and purring with relief. The other lionesses gathered around, each taking turns to sniff and examine the rescued cub. The male lion approached last, his massive head lowering to gently touch the youngster with his nose. Marcus remained kneeling on the riverbank, water dripping from his uniform, watching this intimate family moment unfold. He should have been terrified, surrounded by 6 of Africa's most dangerous predators. Instead, he felt honored to witness something few humans had ever seen, the genuine emotional bonds within a lion pride. Dr. Sarah Mbeki, a wildlife biologist, who later reviewed Marcus's body camera footage, was stunned by what she observed. The grooming behavior exhibited by the matriarch is typically reserved for pride members, she explained. For a wild lioness to extend this gesture to a human suggests a level of cognitive recognition and gratitude that challenges our fundamental understanding of feline social intelligence. As the pride settled around their recovered cub, Marcus began to slowly back away, hoping to give them space and avoid disrupting this precious family moment. But the lions had other plans. As Marcus began to retreat, the matriarch looked up from her cub and made a sound he had never heard before in his months in Kenya. It wasn't a roar or a growl, but a gentle rumbling call that seemed almost conversational. The other pride members immediately responded, rising to their feet and positioning themselves in a formation that took Marcus's breath away. The lions arranged themselves in 2 parallel lines, creating a clear pathway from where Marcus stood to the acacia tree where his patrol equipment waited. It was an escort formation, an honor guard protecting his safe passage away from the river. "Impossible," Marcus whispered, his voice caught by the body camera microphone still recording every moment. "They're seeing me safely out." The matriarch took the lead position on Marcus's right side, while the massive male lion moved to his left. The four other lionesses flanked them, maintaining perfect spacing as they began a slow, ceremonial walk away from the riverbank. Marcus found himself in the center of this extraordinary procession, surrounded by over 1,500 pounds of apex predators who were treating him like an honored guest rather than potential prey. The rescued cub, now recovered enough to walk, trotted alongside his mother, occasionally looking up at Marcus with what appeared to be curiosity rather than fear. Every few steps, the youngster would brush against Marcus's leg, a gesture of familiarity that left the officer speechless. As they reached Marcus's equipment, the Pride came to a halt. The matriarch approached Marcus one final time, her massive head tilting slightly as she studied his face. Then, in a gesture that would be replayed millions of times on social media, she gently pressed her forehead against his, the same greeting behavior lions use with trusted Pride members. "Thank you," Marcus whispered, not caring if the lions could understand his words. "Thank you for trusting me." The matriarch stepped back and released a soft chuff, a sound of contentment and farewell. One by one, each member of the Pride approached, Marcus briefly touching him with their noses or rubbing against his legs. Even the massive male lion participated, gently bumping Marcus's shoulder with his enormous head before moving away. The rescued cub was the last to say goodbye. The youngster sat directly in front of Marcus, tilted his tiny head upward, and released a small mew that sounded remarkably like a thank you. Marcus reached down and gently stroked the cub's head one final time, both of them seeming to understand that this moment would never be repeated. As the Pride began to move away, heading toward the shade of distant trees for their afternoon rest, Marcus stood alone by his equipment, soaking wet and emotionally overwhelmed by what had just transpired. His body camera had captured every second of the unprecedented encounter. The footage would later be authenticated by wildlife experts, analyzed by animal behaviorists, and featured in documentaries around the world. Dr. Jane Goodall herself would call it one of the most remarkable displays of interspecies communication and gratitude ever recorded. But for Marcus, the technical analysis mattered less than the profound truth he had experienced firsthand. In that muddy river, surrounded by wild lions who should have seen him as a threat, he had witnessed something that science was only beginning to understand: the capacity for genuine gratitude and recognition across species barriers. The rescued cub grew to full adulthood under the protection of his Pride, and Marcus continued his wildlife protection duties in the Masai Mara. On several occasions over the following months, he encountered the same Pride during his patrols. Each time, the matriarch would acknowledge him with a gentle chuff, and the now-grown lion he had saved would approach his patrol vehicle without fear, sometimes resting in the shade it provided. Local Maasai guides began calling Marcus Simba's brother, the policeman who had been adopted, however briefly, into a lion pride. Tourism operators started offering Officer Rodriguez tours, hoping to recreate the magic of his encounter, though none ever came close to replicating the extraordinary trust and gratitude he had experienced. Dr. Mbeki established the Rodriguez Mara Research Foundation to study the cognitive and emotional capabilities demonstrated by the Pride during the rescue. Marcus's experience proves that the boundaries between human and animal consciousness are far more fluid than we ever imagined, she wrote in her groundbreaking paper. What we witnessed wasn't just animal behavior, it was a demonstration of values we consider uniquely human: gratitude, honor, and the recognition of moral debt. For Officer Marcus Rodriguez, who had started that day simply hoping to complete his routine patrol, the encounter became a life-changing reminder that compassion is a universal language, spoken and understood by creatures we're only beginning to truly know. It reinforced everything he believed about his duty to protect and serve. Whether the lives in danger belonged to humans or animals, the calling remained the same.